Now, Dylan and I are sitting in some tree stands right now, and this is our last hunt before the 4-day doe season they have in Wisconsin. And really, it's the last hunt of the second rut, because by the time I'll be back and we'll get into the end of December, there won't be much rut left. And really, from this time on and into January, and I come out with every month October deer hunting rules, November, December. And I was looking at, well, we need to come up with January, but really it boils down to winter deer hunting rules. And what are those rules that you can live by? Because it stays pretty consistent, and it really doesn't matter if it's January or February. It's about the same. And so we'll talk about one of the first points of wintertime deer hunting rules is you cannot afford to spook the herd. The herd gets bunched up around afternoon food sources and relating cover. They'll be there until that food runs out, until the cover is pushed, until they lose that cover. But they're going to be there and they'll keep feeding. You know, why would they move? Standing cornfield, standing bean field, maybe a really good clear cut out on public land, a hidden honey hole where they've been pushed to, hunter pressured to, and they're going to follow those same patterns. Very reliable patterns too. And what I see a lot of times is once you go through November, December, January, February, a lot of times those patterns hold. Deer might even migrate to really heavy cover areas. But for the time of hunting season, and there is some migration up north still, but for the most part, we really need to pay attention to those food sources, the afternoon hunting opportunities. Morning, it's tough to get into unless there's a little bit of the second rut left, which some of you will have towards the end of December. But boy, really have to pay attention to that food, and you have to make sure you don't spook that herd, because when they leave, a lot of times they don't come back unless they're pushed back, their food runs out, their cover runs out, and it might be the rest of the winter, might be a month, 2 months before they come back. You know, it's amazing how many client properties I go to in January and February snow. There's fresh rubs, fresh scrapes, and last time they were there in November, they didn't see a deer. Well, it took a month or two for those deer to feel comfortable and to come on back. I love to focus on afternoon hunting. We're sitting in an afternoon spot right now that we could take advantage of some second rut opportunity. So we're hoping to see some does and some movement this afternoon. We're waiting for our thermals to go downhill, so I'm hoping they start doing that. The wind's supposed to be really light. So the lighter that wind is, the earlier it'll go downhill with the thermals. Heavy winds, the thermals have a harder time pulling it downhill. We're hunting these afternoon times because morning, a lot of times the deer are bedded in the coldest part of the day, which is morning. So you try to get into a bedding area and you spook them out. And a lot of times because it's crispy and crunchy, you're spooking them out a quarter mile before you get there, 300 yards. And you could have a devastating effect on your property. On the flip side, in the afternoon, you can sneak in areas where you do not feel that they're bedding, and that's why it's important on your deer habitat and your areas, whether it's on private land, and you define exactly where those deer are bedding with high-quality cuts, high-quality cover options, switchgrass, diversity pockets, whatever it might be. But you define where those deer are so you know exactly where they're at when you walk in the afternoon, and you know exactly where they're not, which is even more important. Allows you to get in and out without spooking them. So I'm focusing on these afternoon movements. Now, a lot of you think, well, that's got to relate directly to food. Well, for some of these mature bucks that have been pushed, prodded, or recovering from the rut, and they're just sitting around, a lot of times they're not moving until that last half-hour light. They're still moving during daylight. We're in a location right now where we're 300 yards away from food, and this is my #1 favorite way to hunt some of these big bucks in the afternoon, where we're 300 yards away from food, 400 yards away, and we have really thick bedding near us. We've seen mature bucks over the years. I shot a beautiful 160-inch 9th day of gun season coming out of the cover right behind me. But I call these bedding staging areas. And what that means is they exit their bedding areas sometimes very quickly. They get out of that bedding area, and then they get to an area where it's more of a social area, rubs, scrapes. It's an area that they feel comfortable with, and they take a pause before they head down to food. And I love hunting these areas because if that buck is getting down to that food source 400 yards away or 300 yards away, right after dark or 20 minutes after dark, then you can feel confident that he'll be here during shooting hours. And that's why I like hunting up here. Now, another option is if these big bucks are on your food sources during daylight and they're not hitting those until after dark, then you know those food sources are of course great areas to hunt. But again, it goes back to, again, you can't spook the herd. And if you're spooking these deer at the food source, your property is going to be ruined, especially this is 30 acres of cover, 40-acre parcel. Doesn't matter if it's 100 acres of parcel. We noticed we had some people being invasive around us in Minnesota, and just non-hunters. And we noticed a pretty big effect over a week to 10 days where We know those people are out there moving around, and it took a little while for the herd to get back. You know, when you're spooking those deer right at dinner time, and they don't expect anybody, if there's dogs, there's people talking, then you could have a devastating effect on your hunting. So on those food sources, the number one rule is you have to be able to get in and out without spooking deer. If you get in safely but you spook them after dark, it doesn't really matter. Your hunt's done. It has a devastating effect in October, but at least in early October, the deer will settle down if you make a mistake like that by the end of October. 2-3 weeks. They have a pretty good 2 to 3 weeks of forgiveness. But this time of year, we're talking 2 to 3 months sometimes, or a month, or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it might be. It's a long time. Try hunting a bedding staging area. You can look that up on my YouTube channel. If you type in bedding staging areas, you'll find videos that I've done in the past on that, staging areas in general. And then we're hunting right before the food. And that's often where I really like to hunt as opposed to the food, because you have to maintain the integrity of that food source, or the whole movement's done, your bedding areas are done, even if they're 400 yards away, 500 yards away. So I'm looking at hunting as close to the food source as I can, so I can capture the bottom of the funnel of daylight movement, meaning there might be multiple trails coming into that food source. I want to be at the bottom of the funnel of those trails and not off to the side of just one. And so I want to be as close to the food source as possible, but far enough away so I can still get in and out of that stand without spooking 10, 12, 15, 20 deer, 5 deer that are on that food plot when I want to get out at dark. So those are my 3 main areas that I'm focusing on. The bedding staging area, the food source itself, but you have to exercise great caution. And then of course, those trails in the bottom of the funnel as those deer are going into the bedding area. And those are sometimes, you can hunt those over and over again. If your wind's on your side, if your axis is on your side, and you're just watching that movement, whether you're finding a very defined funnel on public land and you're hunting it, or you're creating that funnel and that movement on small parcels, you can find that and have a really good hunt. But really, my favorite are these bedding areas, staging areas, because whether bedding coming from this way, behind me, this way, they come to an area like this, and then they slowly filter on the property, multiple directions that they can get down to the food. And we're kind of in that hub then of when they exit their bedding areas. And so I like to, if I can get to a hub of several bedding areas where you have an X of movement way back here, it's not any surprise. Probably realize these are great all-day hunts for the rut, where deer are going to bedding, coming from bedding, and a lot of movement. And you'll find, like during the rut, when they're all really focused on those food sources an hour before light, you'll find a half hour, or hour before dark, you'll find a half hour before dark, there's not as many deer up here because they're all down in that food source. It's safe and social. It's what they've been used to. But when you get to this time of year, they're a little jumpy. Those bucks aren't necessarily rushing right down to that food source to check does. They're a little bit more cautious. They've put another season under their belt by the time you get into mid-December. And they're going to be exiting their bedding areas a little bit later. And they might be standing up an hour before light, browsing a little bit, but once they decide to move, they move, and then they slow up in a spot like this. So we're hoping to catch some of that movement. Like I said, this is right before Wisconsin's doe season. I still have a buck tag with my bow tag here, and Dylan's in the tree. I'm going to hunt later in December too. But boy, it'd be great if it all came together tonight. We've looking for third time's a charm, you know, this week as far as hunting up here in the evening. I had a really nice 10-point that I watched quite a bit 2 sits ago, maybe 3 sits ago, and it was a nice buck. It was just a 3-year-old, but really heavy, nice 10. It was on some does, chasing them. It was with a little buck. They came through, and it's pretty cool because they came from this area. I was about 300 yards away from here, so we'll see. Hopefully we're more in that hub. Again, we're hunting a bedding staging area. These same rules apply all winter long, and all the way out. Some of the seasons last into February, and hopefully you're able to enjoy that time. I'm hoping when we come back there's a little snow, which would be really nice to get in here. We're by some conifers, so that always helps too. But enjoy these wintertime hunting rules. It's coming to a close. But you know what's crazy? All of a sudden we'll be looking forward to opening day 30 days away or something like that. It just flies by so fast, especially when you're busy in the whitetail woods like we are all year. I hope you've had a great season. I've really enjoyed bringing these hunting rules to you. I've enjoyed the engagement down in the comments below. I really appreciate you guys watching. It's been a great journey since we started the channel in 2014, but especially these last few years and getting these videos out. I really appreciate each one of you, and It's been a great hunting season, and it's pretty cool. It's actually flipping over into habitat season, so you'll start to see a lot of our videos changing: shed hunting, scouting, bedding area work, travel corridors, timber harvest. There's a lot that goes on in these winter months, and I hope you enjoy the journey. I hope you're into it all season long, all year long, and you can bet we'll bring it to you. Whatever advice and strategy is working for that week of the year, we'll bring it to you and more on this channel. Hope you enjoy it. Well, if you made it to the end of this video, you're obviously interested in whitetail habitat solutions, what I have to teach, and you will love my new web class series. The first one is how to design your whitetail property. It's out now. The link is in the description. I invite you to check it out. It's on my website. Can't wait to hear about it.